Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating economic paradox from our source material. We are going to explore the profound cognitive dissonance between India's glowing macroeconomic headlines and the harsh reality actually being reported on the ground. So let's look at the data together to see exactly what the sources say is happening just beneath the surface. Okay, let's dive into this. Back in May 2026, the official narrative proudly declared India as the world's fastest-growing major economy, boasting a massive 8.2% GDP growth on paper. But at the exact same time, there was a prime ministerial appeal urging citizens to actually reduce basic consumption. People were asked to cut their cooking oil use by 10%, avoid buying gold, and even stop traveling abroad just to save foreign exchange. So you have to ask yourself, how can an economy be booming while its citizens are literally being asked to cut back on basic everyday necessities? Section 1. Growth versus ground reality. To understand this paradox, the source material asks us to look past the official headlines and really examine the actual lives of everyday citizens. The source shares this incredibly striking anecdote of a man named Alpesh Bai, a diamond worker in Surat. Now, Alpesh's life used to be a textbook economic success story. He moved from a village to the world's largest diamond hub, worked his way up to earning 35,000 rupees a month, which was enough to send his daughters to an English medium private school. But then, global trade crises hit the industry. His factory started firing people. Alpesh's salary was slashed to 18,000, and eventually he lost his job entirely. To survive, he was forced into manual labor, carrying bundles of clothes for a mere 12,000 rupees a month. He had to pull his kids out of private school, and the craziest part? This all happened while the overarching economy was supposedly booming. Section 2. The looming job crisis. Alpesh's story isn't just one bad break. It reflects a terrifying nationwide macroeconomic trend regarding employment. 9.3%. According to a quietly released government report cited in our source, this number represents the devastating drop in informal manufacturing jobs during the exact same April to June 2025 quarter, where GDP supposedly grew by 7.8%. To put that into perspective, that is 2.7 million jobs wiped out in just 3 months. Millions of families instantly losing their livelihoods while the top-level economic indicators looked absolutely fine. And the source emphasizes that this job crisis, it's really just a trailer for what's coming. The World Economic Forum estimates a staggering 90 million global jobs will be lost to AI and automation by 2030. Focusing in on India, experts warn the IT sector alone risks losing 400,000 to 500,000 jobs in just the next 2 to 3 years. We're already seeing major companies like TCS executing massive layoffs. It's not necessarily that an AI robot takes your job, but rather that one worker using AI can suddenly do the work of 5 people, making the other 4 completely redundant. Section 3. Funding life with debt. So this begs a crucial question. If millions are losing their jobs or facing severe pay cuts, how are cars, smartphones, and appliances still selling? What is keeping the GDP afloat? Well, the source argues the answer is debt. Consumption is being dangerously propped up by what they call an EMI economy. By March 2025, household debt hit 41.3% of GDP. Now, taking on debt to buy a house or start a business is one thing, right? That builds an asset. But dangerously, 55.3% of this debt is for non-housing retail loans. We're talking personal loans, credit card EMIs, buying TVs and ACs. People are borrowing money just to fund their everyday lifestyle needs because their actual income just isn't cutting it anymore. And this brilliantly illustrates why people are forced into these loans. Data from the International Labor Organization shows that while surface-level salaries might look higher today, real inflation-adjusted wages have actually fallen. From 12,100 rupees in 2012 down to 10,925 rupees in 2022, people are literally earning less in real terms than they were a decade ago. The source points out that 90% of people are currently struggling without any financial buffer whatsoever. Section 4. 3 major global shocks. With the average citizen's financial buffer already completely depleted, the explainer's source material details how the economy was then hit by a devastating triple threat from the outside world.
It was a cascading series of global shocks. First, in August 2025, the US slapped a massive 50% tariff on India. Then, in February 2026, the US forced a ban on cheap Russian oil imports as part of a geopolitical negotiation. And right as that essential energy supply was cut off, a third shock hit that exact same month. A conflict in the Middle East blocked the Strait of Hormuz. So suddenly you have trade wars and actual wars simultaneously choking India's exports and completely strangling its essential energy imports.
The on-the-ground human and industrial cost of this was absolutely severe. The source outlines the collapse of major export hubs. In Tirupur, a garment export powerhouse, U.S. tariff duties spiked to 64%, instantly threatening 150,000 jobs. The shrimp industry, which employs around 2 million people, watched its orders just evaporate. And back in Surat, the diamond industry faced a brutal combo of raw material shortages and tariffs, leading to 400,000 job or pay cuts and, tragically, 71 reported workers' suicides. These disruptions hit people right in their kitchens. Now, the source asserts that official inflation metrics really mask the true crisis. The official inflation rate for May 2026 was reported at 3.93%. But according to an economist from JNU, the effective inflation rate for low-income earners was actually closer to an unbelievable 60%. Why the massive gap? Because essentials on the ground were skyrocketing. Black market LPG cylinders spiked over 2,000 rupees, and surging fuel costs made everyday survival incredibly difficult for the working class.
Section 5. The Collapsing Rupee Crisis. Shifting our focus to the macroeconomic consequences of these shocks, we have to talk about the rapid devaluation of the national currency.
By May 2026, the rupee hit an all-time low of 96 rupees and 90 paise against the US dollar. The source notes this made it the worst-performing currency in Asia. Now, a weak currency isn't just a bummer for international travel. Remember, India has a 90% crude oil import dependency. When the rupee collapses, oil, fertilizer, and machinery become drastically more expensive to buy, which just violently feeds right back into that inflation loop. And because India was forced to pivot its oil strategy, like buying from Venezuela instead of Russia, they had to pay a massive premium in dollars. This drained the national reserves. The source points out that usable foreign exchange reserves plunged to $471 billion, a critically low level we haven't seen since 2014. It's highly alarming because that amount fails to cover even 6 months of the country's basic import requirements. Normally, in a currency crisis like this, you'd cross your fingers and hope foreign investors bring in dollars to save the falling currency. But the data shows something else entirely. Net foreign direct investment cratered from $43.9 billion in 2020-21 to just $0.96 billion in 2024-25. So instead of bringing money in, there was a catastrophic flight of foreign capital out of the country. Now, textbook economics says that when things get this dire, the government should step in, spend money, and create jobs. But the source argues the government literally cannot do so because its own debt has exploded. Between 2014 and 2026, government debt ballooned from 62 trillion rupees to over 197 trillion rupees, pushing the debt-to-GDP ratio past 80%. If we break down where the government's money actually goes, you'll see why that debt is so paralyzing. 25% of revenue goes straight into paying interest on old debt. Add 28% for salaries, 15% for pensions, and 15% for subsidies. The source emphasizes that over 80% of government revenue is already booked just to keep the lights on and pay past debts. The treasury is essentially empty. And as if all of that wasn't enough, the source warns that a terrifying El Niño weather pattern is looming. Historically, this disrupts agriculture and severely exacerbates rural unemployment. The deeply worrying part is that the country has zero financial buffer left to handle this impending agricultural and rural fallout. So, based on the source's analysis, we are left with this incredibly provocative question. With empty treasuries, fleeing foreign investors, and a citizenry drowning in debt, how long can the illusion of macro-level growth truly mask the harsh reality on the ground? It's a striking paradox that really forces us to look past the top-line numbers. Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with us today, and we will catch you next time.